We are live. All right. So last time, just kind of recap, we went through exercise 2. However, I talked too much and I was definitely short on time. However, I forgot to mention there's definitely more ways to make a surface, right? I mean, I went over 3 or 4 points surface. That one's pretty simple. I think a lot of you are realizing the potential of maybe network surface. What's even cooler is I know I just did it as a box, but you can kind of do whatever you want. So potentially, like, I don't know, maybe you had a diamond-shaped roof or building. You could potentially use that later, right, to shape your studio projects, right? Obviously, I'm talking to the ones that are going into D3, right? Where, to be fair, if you're in my D3 course, you're going to be expected to do some technology in Rhino. If you're in Kernodles, definitely. However, if you're in Ryzen or Garcia, maybe not so much, right? Ryzen's not a huge fan of digital technologies, and to be fair, Garcia is kind of on the fence. If you bring something good to the table, she's for it. If you don't, she shoots you down pretty quick, right? She's pretty good about that. Brutally honest, and sometimes it's needed, right? But in our case, we can do some different things. I wanted to mention that you can loft something as well, right? So you can actually get a set of curves. So interesting enough, let's go ahead and make a set of curves. Just because I didn't want to rob you of some of the other ways we can make stuff. So I'm just going to do something really simple, use a line, maybe copy it a couple times, and almost get like a ribbed wireframe going on, right? So take a look at what that looks like. And eventually you get so good at this, guys, that you're drawing and you kind of know what's happening in each scene, right? So it's definitely like an instrument. You know what it's going to do when you press the keys down, and you know what kind of sounds it's going to make if you don't have the right embouchure. Anyway, new words for today. But let's go ahead and see what that does. Maybe refocus. Also, you can refocus or zoom select inside of a command. Some commands don't let you do other commands while you're in a command, but zoom select does, and that is definitely beneficial, right? Especially when we're working with so many pieces. But let's get these pieces right here. I can hit F10. Sweet. And grab those points, and I can further shape them, right? So I mean, don't get me wrong, we could do some pretty cool stuff right there. Maybe get that going. I don't know, maybe this one's actually down. Maybe it does the opposite. I don't know. That's pretty cool. I don't know. Design is an iterative process, but that would be a pretty cool surface. Let's see what it looks like. So I'm going to take all of them. I'm going to loft them. LOFT. And it's going to basically wrap that surface for me. And as you can see, it didn't maintain those straight lines, right? Now, don't get me wrong, that's because I have it on a normal option. If I switched it to like maybe tight, right, it's going to maybe change that parabola a little bit. It's still going to be a parabola, and it's still trying to mathematically, correct and make a surface out of these elements. What is kind of not so great is I can't manipulate it while I'm doing it. To be fair, this is something we use Grasshopper for, and it's a little more advanced. Whereas like Blender and other programs, you can kind of do that live, right? So to be fair, it can be an iterative process. But some of you guys might realize there's a lot of different options inside of these. So like a straight sections option, we can definitely still get those straight sections, but to be fair, they're still gonna, try to make up for that curvilinear elements. I'm a big fan of loose, I like it loosey-goosey, right? It's kind of just, it's subtle, right? It's a little more soft. But I'm going to press OK. And yeah, bam. Can you imagine? There's my roof. Just like that. So ominous. But yeah, there's definitely much more ways to make a surface. So play around with loft. What's kind of nice about loft is, whereas network surface needs just a regular line, loft you can actually, you could really get crazy with the spices, if you will. For instance, let's take this curve element. Where's the easiest way to draw this? I do this all the time, and it's definitely much more Zaha Hadid, if you're familiar. But let's find that element, and sometimes you're like, man, where did I put that element? Again, zoom select, absolutely awesome, right? But let's go ahead and not make it way over here. However, you'll notice that it drew it over there because that's where my C plane is. I forgot to explain that. Anytime that you draw, actually, in the top view or the front view or the right view, by default, it's going to go to your C plane. That's kind of where that exists. I did want to mention, since we're getting into the details today, that you can move your seaplane if it's just absolutely annoying you. So if you type in seaplane, there's tons of options, right? I mean, I'm not going to go through all of them today. However, you're going to want to change the world, right? I know it sounds kind of weird. And then you can actually change, like, different view types and everything like that. You can also go back if you accidentally clicked on something else. You press spacebar, and what's nice is we can decide where it should be. So I'm going to click maybe, I don't know, let's go with, you can select it to an object, you can gumball it, and everything like that. You could also just reset it as well. Maybe you accidentally moved it, maybe you accidentally changed it, you don't even know how you did that. Type in seaplane and then of course reset. Now on the Mac, honestly it's kind of confusing because there's a bunch of little options like this. But you can select world, right? We can go to the top, right? And it'll put it back into a default, right? Especially if you actually click on the view that you're clicking on. But if we want to move it, right, we'll type in seaplane, and you'll see that it makes a crosshair. But say like I wanted to work down here, I could totally move that seaplane, right? And again, it's not huge or sometimes even beneficial, but sometimes we're drawing like really specific stuff, like a window at a certain part, and you're like constantly drawing stuff and it's going way off in the distance. Move your seaplane to that window, right? That makes a lot of sense, so that you can draw kind of in that area. It's kind of like a sketch pad for this world. It's almost like a canvas, right? And I get to decide where I kind of want to draw in three-dimensional space. Anyway, I did forget to mention that in the first couple of videos, so did want to make sure that I cover that just in case you're running into that as well. But we've got a couple more ideas on surfaces. To be fair, Loft is pretty cool because not only can it do open curves, but it can do closed curves as well. So for instance, if I have a couple of these, and I really was just feeling like a Zaha Hadid moment or something, right? I could really, or maybe even, what's his name? Not Robert Frost. Oh my gosh, where's the guy? Who's the guy that says, how much does your building weigh? Norman Foster, right? Very Norman Foster-esque. So we can loft even closed curves. Now, Loft won't do an open and a closed curve, right? It's either all closed or all open, right? So that's definitely one thing to keep in mind. This is where the direction can make a difference. We were talking about how, oh yeah, it shows that little arrow of the direction it splices, but yeah, I mean, we can make just about anything. Honestly, the issue first is usually drawing it first and coming up with the idea. The second hard part is going, okay, well, how do we make that digitally, right? And we'll get there, of course, in the semester, just naturally. But yeah, already 4 different ways we can make surfaces. 3 or 4 points, network surface, loft, and closed loft as well. To be fair, I could take this and I could chop it in half. Nobody would have to know that it was a closed surface, right? Or I may want to show little steps of how I made that surface, for instance. That could be a part of one step. Even though this assignment says only 3 steps only, you could have sub-steps. Nobody said you couldn't, right? Anyway, so a couple of those, but actually what I wanted to go over today was how we can add some shade and shadow to actually some of these elements, right? So for instance, we did this last time, and to be fair, it's already outdated. It's not going to work for what I want to do today. What I want to do today is be able to set up my view and change my camera, right? So for instance, right now, what we're seeing is almost really a one-point perspective, or a first-person view, if you will, of a camera. In fact, if you type in camera, enter, and you click show, you won't see anything here, but if you start going to the other views, you'll start to realize you're essentially a camera in this world. And funny enough, it works just like your optics, right? If you've ever, does anybody wear glasses? Yeah, we definitely probably understand optics a little bit. That the light comes into the eyes like a cone, right? You have basically 2 cones, and it's called a stereoscopic vision, right? Now, don't get me wrong, we only have one stereoscopic vision here, right? It's just one cone, if you will, really a pyramid, right? Trying to do all that for us, right? But as you can see, if I zoom in, the cone gets smaller. If I zoom out, obviously we get more to that. And this is mainly the reason why I teach a little bit of Rhino in my Graphics 2 course, because actually there's a lot of parallels between what you're drawing 2-dimensionally and those 2-point perspectives that you struggled so hard with, right? And the digital world. What do you think the digital world was mimicking? The real world, right? So we used actually the same concepts, the stationary point, the vanishing points, the horizon line. We used all those concepts and we applied them to the digital. So the good news is, well, it's all the same, right? If I change my vanishing point, right, I can really change the focal view of something. So don't get me wrong, there's a lot that we can do with the camera, and we'll introduce it today. But most importantly, we want to be able to save the views that we find, right? I can't tell you how many times I find the perfect view. I don't save it, and I'm like, man, I'll never find that exact perfect view again. You know, it just never will be quite the same. It'd be the equivalent of trying to fly a drone over the Tower of Life building. You're never going to get that drone in the exact same spot that it was with the exact same wind and everything like that. However, not to digress too bad, let's go ahead and set up a camera for our object. That way we can actually place an image underneath our lines. That's essentially what we're doing today. And we don't necessarily have to do that for every step, but you know, for some of the complex stuff, you know, the information not be quite getting clear. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I don't think this line does justice to actually the complexity of actually the shape that we made. That's pretty awesome, right? And I almost kind of want you see all these kind of what they're called as UV lines, right? X and Y lines, essentially. Maybe I want some of those even in my drawing as well. I mean, that might be kind of nice. Or I could defer to maybe a shade and shadow element. So for instance, if I go to a rendered view, that shade and shadow quickly, instantly calculated, right? How many of you guys have taken graphics 2? And you sat there and calculated shade and shadow, and you got every top point, every bottom point, and you calculate it. Well, that was for good reason, because now it does it in seconds, and you know what it's doing now, right? You know why that it actually has the outcome that it does. So don't worry, you actually have more tool belts, or sorry, you have more tools on your tool belt. But in that regard, maybe I want some of that shade and shadow to actually be underneath my lines. However, I don't just want to take a screenshot, right? Because, well, oops, I just changed the view. It's not going to match the lines. Oops, I just changed the view. It's not going to match those Make 2D lines. So how do I get the view to match? In my case, I'll want to set up that view, and maybe I do want to make a copy just in case I mess up. Or maybe I just have more things to say, so I'm going to put a copy over here. And the reason I put it off into a distance is because you'll notice when I render something, it renders everything, right? So I don't necessarily want it in the scene, if you will, but I'm going to go ahead and isolate it. So I'm going to focus in on it, kind of find the right view, and as you can see, and sometimes still the background is still there, right? You kind of want to eliminate that as much as possible. Keep in mind we do have Photoshop. There are ways of taking it out, but if we can turn it a little bit, obviously that saves us already 30 minutes right there. So making some good decisions. But let's say that was my view. That's looking pretty sweet. Maybe I don't want to show the bounding box necessarily to that, but maybe I kind of wanted to go for like a exploded ISO final image kind of thing. And maybe I actually have too much here. Maybe I need to remove some things. Like step 1. Maybe some elements I'm no longer using. Again, maybe I forgot a piece or two. But yeah, looking pretty good. But I'll solidify the view. Let's say that's looking pretty cool, pretty good. Let's test it out in a rendered view just for giggles, right? Starting to get kind of a little bit of shade and shadow at the bottom. If you're not getting the shade and shadow at the bottom, you may need to turn on your ground plane. So if you type in ground plane, do make sure that it's on, right? Usually by default, sometimes it's on, sometimes it's not. It really depends on the system, to be honest with you. But yeah, you'll notice if I don't have it checked, it's kind of out in the oblivion. I don't know about you, but I kind of like the under shadow. It kind of gives it that feel. It's entirely up to you. But just in case you were wondering what the heck that is, it's your ground plane. Right, and it's actually controlled by the object that is farthest touching the ground. It's going to establish kind of a fictitious ground plane. But yes, we do have that option, and I don't need this entire tab for that, but we will eventually need these tabs. So you'll notice there's a rendering tab and all kinds of things, but first let's set up the view, because I don't want to accidentally mess it up like that or accidentally mess it up like that. I do want to hone in my exact view. To be fair, that's looking a little confusing. That's looking pretty good for an exploded AXO. So that looks pretty sweet. I'm going to go ahead and click on the down arrow, and you'll see something that actually says set view. In my case, mine's already checked because I already have that available to me. But on the Windows, you should click it and it pops up another window, right? To be fair, it kind of does the same thing in Mac. You'll see it kind of went away. I already had it there, right? So if I go, again, down arrow, set view, named views, right? And of course that pops up, and you'll see actually quite a few options, right? So in my case, on the Mac side, I think it's a little camera. So let's go ahead and make sure we got one of those. Right now, these are actually all the environments and Windows settings. Mine didn't pop up, actually. Let's find out why. There we go. Named view. Oh, that's because I don't have any, and I mistakenly. However, I believe you can actually right-click and add a view or save current viewport. That's on the Mac. However, on Windows, there should be a plus button, right, that says save view, or even a save icon that says save the view. It depends on the version you have. They kind of change the UI a little bit. But it almost like you're adding a layer or taking a snapshot in some way. So in my case, I'm going to right-click. I'm going to save current viewport. I'm going to call it final exercise 2 step, I don't know, 3, right? At least be concise. I'm going to go ahead and press apply. Oh man, I accidentally changed it. What do? Well, if I double click on that view or that snapshot I took, bam, right to the same spot. I can't tell you, I didn't learn this until like 2 years in. I was an idiot. Just sitting there like, why don't the lines match with the rendering? And now I can save you 2 years of your life, right? You're welcome. But in this case, we could do this for days, right? Maybe this is a better view. Let's try it out, right? Again, I can save that view. It's going to leave the same thing, and I could say take 2. But what's nice is now I can go to my studio professor and I go, Professor, ma'am, or sir, this view or that view, right? And I don't have to sit there and confuse them and rotate my model or try to find the same spot that I'm talking about. I wanted to show the living room, but hold on, let me find it first. Yeah, that makes you look kind of, not silly, but it looks like you're communicating that you don't know what you're doing, right? You're not playing it off quite like, oh, look, I'm set up, I'm organized. So what I'm trying to say is eventually we present this stuff too, right? I mean, eventually, don't get me wrong, I'd be lying if I didn't open up my Rhino sometimes and actually talk to a client in a rendered view, and I have views set up for them, and I just click through those views. I didn't even render them, but it's enough to actually get the point across, right? And the same thing could be applied to Studio. However, now we're good. Now we can make 2D, right? And maybe, I do like that one better. I'm gonna go ahead and make 2D. So I'm gonna highlight everything. What I like to do, guys, is double check, because I can't tell you how many times I accidentally I do that and I don't even see it. Like, maybe I'm not even looking at my screen and I accidentally do that, right? Again, I might save myself 2 hours, because what eventually happens is I'm trying to line up the lines to the image, and if I slightly turn that, it is never, ever going to line up, and you're gonna sit there for 2 hours going, why? So don't do that. If it doesn't line up in 30 minutes, go back and try this step again, right? So in my case, I do want to double click on that piece again. Where'd it go? Where'd I put it? Usually it's a little camera for mine. I'll just go back to it. I apologize. I should know where it is, but there it is. There we go. Where'd it go though? Okay, now it's at the bottom, so maybe it's enacted now. But again, what I like to do is double check and double click on it again before I make 2D. Just kind of a good rule to have. And another thing, if we wanted those isometric lines, if we wanted all the lines, right? Maybe we want to show a little bit of the hidden lines, especially for this object, because, well, we're going to put an image in there. And I don't know about you, of course I'll show you today, but it might be really interesting to see this kind of hybrid drawing, both physical and ghosted at the same time. Maybe it can communicate more information. Maybe it confuses them too much. So we'll find out. And good thing it'll put it in its own layer, because I can always just turn off that layer, right, if I don't need it. But better to have it there than to not have it and want it and need it. So I'm going to go with show hidden lines. It's also going to take much longer to make 2D, because that's pretty complex, to be honest with you. One thing you can double check though is make sure at the top that the same view that you made is the same view here. Sometimes you can actually find it. To be fair, I do think it just defaults to whatever view that you were on and you typed in make 2D. So be aware of that. Sometimes students, they'll accidentally make the top view and be like, what's going on? Well, you selected the top view when you made 2D. So, but group output, that's definitely important. And we'll sublayer it, make 2D. I want to make sure I'm not forgetting any options. You can get a scene silhouette. Honestly, I have no idea what that is. Maybe we can find out. But let's apply. Let's go ahead and let it do its thing. And now let's get the image that we need for this render. To be absolutely fair, some people's computer, when you hit render, it crashes. I'm not gonna lie to you. My old Macintosh running this version, every time I hit render for about 30 seconds, it would just cut out. So don't get me wrong, if that be the case, save it as a Rhino 7, or sorry, at Rhino 8, and you can open it up on these computers, right? And go ahead and do the rendering. They won't have any issues, right? To be fair, that's why there's all those updates for the Mac, and I just need to get Vlad involved maybe to get some more updates. But that being the case, what I will find acceptable is you could take a screenshot too. That would be perfectly fine. You could take the screenshot and you could do exactly what we're doing today, especially if you're having problems rendering, right? However, if you want to be a little bit more advanced about it, we're going to go to the rendering tab. In our case, it's this little blue sort of shaded ball, right? And you'll notice if you click on it, there's tons of options. And to be fair, you could even put them with your other toolbars and things like that, just to save on space. I know I do. But another reason I like the Mac, because it's starting to do this. I'd imagine it's coming to Windows soon. But let's go to that little render ball, and you'll see that there's tons of options here, right? I mean, we're talking, the size, right? The quality. In my case, we don't have to go to final quality or anything, but good quality. Obviously, the higher the quality, the longer the render is going to take. We can change the environment, right? And to be fair, we could do actually all kinds of things. We can make it a transparency background, and that's kind of nice. You're not going to see a difference there, but what's kind of nice is it sets it up as a PNG. That way, if I want a background or not. Can't tell you how many times I've needed that in my life. We can select a wallpaper, and there's actually even already predetermined ones. So for instance, if you click on Studio, and you'll see that there's a plus sign, and you could say choose existing or import from environmental library. Honestly, some of this stuff, guys, is just free. Like if you type in free Rhino environments on Google, you can find like Seattle, Washington. Have you guys ever seen those 360 cameras? That's the same file, right? So if you have your own 360 camera, you could take that image file and put it into your world. Suddenly you have an object in that world, right? So of course that's how we do some of these things. But just for giggles today, right, you can go to import, and you'll see that there's actually default environments, right, already. So if I don't know, you want Studio F, Studio E, that might be copyright. I think that's Escamillas. Anyway, it's the name of his group. But as soon as we do that, it's actually going to change the wallpaper. In our case, it's going to take a little while to load. And you can actually change that 360 environment now to Studio E. Now, obviously, there's not a huge difference between Studio E and Studio, right? Perhaps maybe the lighting up top, as you can see. And it is definitely kind of a different scene, but oh no, I messed up my view, guys. What do I do? All right, go back, double click, we're good to go. Again, it's such a time saver, right? I don't have to spend time looking for that view all the time. I have control over the sun, right? So I can even cast shadows. Ooh, that might be nice. How do I control the sun though? Right, there's actually this little sun icon, but if you don't have that sun icon, you can also type in sun. For Windows, it'll pop up actually a new window. And then make sure it's turned on if you do actually want it turned on. I kind of want it turned on today. That looks pretty good actually. I'm gonna go ahead and manipulate the sun. I know, we're not gods, but we can play God in Rhino, right? We can control the intensity. To be fair, you'll notice that we can even select a location on Earth, right? So like, for instance, I can go to San Antonio and get the exact location and lighting that would be there, according to the equation of time, which is how we calculate that. But I can even change the time of day. I mean, can you imagine the potential in Studio, guys? I can show 9 in the morning versus noon versus 5 p.m. and I can do it all in one spot. I don't have to think super hard and make a different scene every time in Photoshop and take hours and hours now. I can really set myself up for success with a good foundation out of this digital model. But, you do have to keep track of those things. And it might be something you just want to test, right? I mean, my goodness, how many of you guys would have paid to have this in Graphics 2, right? Oh, that's what it's going to look like. Even just as something to test, right? To be fair, I have a computer graphics student that I taught last year. He's in my Graphics 2 now, and we're doing a shade and shadow assignment. I go, it's okay, yeah. If you can model it and test it first, I'm not going to accept that. You still have to draft it, but if you want to check with yourself, absolutely, all right? By all means. Nicole, question?
Can you change the direction of the sun?
Good question. Yes, you can. However, you'll notice if you have it on and not manual control, it will stick to the true sun. Now, if I select manual control, you get a different set of options, and you can control the angle of the sun. You can control south, east, west, north. The sun is never in the north unless you're in Australia, but You know, by all means, it's a great question because, yeah, you can absolutely, and which is a really good question too. This actually goes a little bit into photography, guys. You never take a picture of architecture where the shadow is facing you, right? You never want to have the sun in the back and take a picture of your architecture. Why? No light hitting your object. It's all hitting you. You're going to get solar flares, the lens flares, sorry. You're going to get those weird circles. Don't get me wrong, sometimes they're cool. But, you know, when you're trying to get a picture of the architecture, not so great to have the architecture in a shade and shadow situation. Normally what you'd like to do is actually have the sun to the east, hitting the front, or to the west, hitting the front. That's usually ideal, right? So if we followed that, this would be correct, right? Should be kind of familiar to graphics too, right? You noticed you either had to calculate the shadow this way or calculate the shadow that way. However, what's nice about this is it is a diverging angle. You don't even have to think parallel lines or anything like that. It's doing all of the calculations for us. But it's a good question, right? And we can definitely control it. I would accept that. Probably wouldn't do that. Why? Because it starts to make the object a little confusing, right? You wouldn't have the sun directly behind you either, right? You kind of do want a contrast between elements. Again, for the sake of communication. So in our case, that's looking pretty good, but I can dial it in, but of course, before I hit render. And that's looking pretty good. I kind of like the shadow quality. I know that this is going to end up being a lot of white space though if I want to keep that. So I might choose to go the opposite direction. Maybe I actually have step 1, step 2, step 3, and final. And that might be kind of nice. You see what I'm doing there? I'm kind of setting up my composition in my mind first, right? That helps a lot in the digital realm to think ahead, and we normally do that as architects, right? Or designers. We think a little bit ahead. Oh, what is that going to mean for this person? What does that mean for the birds? What does that mean for the sun and energy? What does that mean for consumption and all those kinds of things, right? So we're pretty used to thinking ahead in that regard. But if this is all looking good, we'll go back to the render tab and go over a couple more options. So we just went over the sun. To be fair, we can even add a spotlight. We can add all kinds of lights. I mean, if we wanted to make this room, we really could. And we could dial it in so good with V-Ray now that some people can't even tell the difference between a photo and a rendering. I mean, how many of you guys have been on Pinterest and you're like, holy crap, is this a render? Is this real? Right, and it's definitely getting pretty realistic. However, that's not always our goal, is to be hyper realistic, just like the Renaissance. I don't know, maybe we get into some surrealism, maybe cartoonism, maybe there's some more playful ways to express a story, right? But we're getting there, right? As you can see, that's kind of where we're going with this, right? Obviously, I'm pointing to the outside wall for those, listening on YouTube. But once this all looks good, to be completely honest with you, I have no idea what render advanced settings is about. You're welcome to look into it. Maybe ask ChatGPT. Maybe it has something to say. I don't know. But we won't use it for today. And this is actually looking pretty good. To be fair, I'm not going to go through the whole rendering process because, why record that? But just so you can see what it's going to do, I'm going to go ahead and hit render. And it should pop up a new window. Now, if this part freezes for you guys, just stop right there. There's something wrong with your graphics card, right? So if it just stays black like this, you're either screen recording like I am, and it took a little while to kind of figure that out, because I'm doing multiple things right now on my computer. But in your case, if you have a Windows computer and it just shows black, make sure you update your video drivers. If you don't know what that is, come see me, right? However, if it's not working for the Mac, I don't have a quick fix for you, right? However, to be fair, it is pretty rare that it doesn't work on Mac. But there is a second option, take a screenshot. Not the end of the world too. Usually, especially on like a high density screen, it looks the same anyway, right? So if you have a Retina screen, it's gonna look fine. But as you can see, my sun is too bright. I'm getting some weird stuff here, right? It definitely looks a lot different than what I was doing in that rendered preview, right, to say the very least. So I may need to work with some of my settings, or I might need to realize that, oh, maybe I want some of my curves in there. And to be fair, in Rhino 8, there's a lot of different options now. We can keep the line work, and we can do all kinds of things to actually save us from having to make 2D or something like that too. To be fair, what stinks about that is it puts it all in one image, which kind of stinks, right? Especially if I don't want purple lines in my drawing, right? I don't want purple lines in our drawings, guys. So unless you're choosing an accent color, right, in some way. So I'm not going to select that because, again, I want my lines. However, there are options available. However, let's say this was good. It's good to go. I'm going to hit save, right? I'll save it as a JPEG or PNG, right? If that's available. It doesn't look like PNG. Oh, PNG is available. I prefer PNG just because it's a higher quality, and it usually maintains a transparent background if that's what I want. So in my case, I'm just going to save it to my desktop real quick. Test, render, enter. All right, so we can save that. Again, not the end of the world if that one's actually looking better. And as you can see, my Rhino totally crashed. Honestly, probably because I'm screen recording. It does kind of mess up when I screen record. Oh, never mind. I just maybe clicked outside the window, but it does, right, to say the least. So just in case you're running into issues, guys, that is what it is. It won't let me close it. Maybe it's still rendering. Usually it'll tell you if it is right here, if it is. But as you can see, it does mess up a little bit, right, to say the very least. I'm going to go ahead and see if there's some sort of window open that's stopping me. Oh, let's try that again. Yes. It looks like it was still rendering, so I don't know why, but sometimes you do have to cancel it. To be fair, I think that one looks a little softer, a little better to me. So I'm going to go ahead and just take a screenshot for today's lesson, because that might be what you end up having to do as well. Because, again, I don't want you to spend 6 hours trying to render something, but at the same time, let's start getting familiar with it, right? But we got a screenshot, and let's go ahead and go to Illustrator. So, oh, my bad. In my case, I need to line up my drawing first. I was assuming that, we already had some things lined up. In my case, I kind of want to get out of that view, so I'm going to go back to Set View and Perspective, right? And go back to maybe a shaded view. Obviously, when you're in a rendered mode, it's going to take up more computing power, right? You'll notice my camera is still on. You can kind of see my cone. If that bothers you, you can type in camera and hide your camera, right? Just in case that's getting in the way. But now we have maybe that view, and obviously that one's outdated now. So let's go ahead and, I don't know, maybe spoke too soon. Or wait, didn't I make 2D? I made 2D somewhere. There it is. Nice. So we'll take that piece, we'll size it up a little bit, and that is the exact view that we rendered. So it should line up no problemo. But again, I still want to set up my drawing. I want to hold shift to make sure it's proportional, because if I accidentally do that, it's definitely not going to line up, right? Of course, I can always edit undo. And again, size some things here first. To be fair, some people, they like to put the picture in here first. So if you type in picture, and let's say we get that test render, we can put it in there, right? And don't get me wrong, the only thing that stinks about that, I mean, you can kind of verify here, but the only thing that stinks is, for some reason, the image doesn't come across. Also, sometimes when you say export as a DWG, it'll just show like a blank square, right? If you export it as an AI file or Illustrator file, sometimes it works, at least in my scenarios, but you can always place an image in Illustrator. But just in case you were trying to be proactive, right, you can definitely do that and go and verify that, oh yeah, it does line up. I don't need to take another shot, right, things like that. But as you can see, we have both bits of information, and it's going to take a second to hone that in just a little bit, right, to get it to line up. To be fair, I'm going to do that in Illustrator. It's kind of hard to to move things in this program per se, but honestly, it takes a little bit of practice. But it looks like it's going to work for us. Just for giggles, this is what we're going to work on for today's episode. But as you can see, it got some of that other information, such as the hidden lines. Definitely nice. Hidden lines, awesome. So just kind of verifying that all the lines are there. Again, it's just good practice. Again, I want to do my drawing here, not in Illustrator. So if I find missing lines here, let's go ahead and draw them, right? But that's looking pretty good. Let's say I was done and I want to get it into Illustrator. So just like last time, we're going to go to File, Export Selected. In my case, I'm going to select DWG for today because my AI file is kind of wacky sometimes. So I'm going to just go to AutoCAD, DWG. To be fair, DXF works too, but DWG is a little bit more common. In my case, I'm just going to save it exercise 2, part 2. And let's make sure it's on the desktop. Good to go. Go ahead and choose either the lowest lines, right? 2007 lines. If the lowest is 2010 for you, choose 2010. Export. And let's go to Illustrator. I'm going to open that bad boy up. desktop, exercise 2. Now, we're not to any scale yet. Again, don't worry, we'll get to scale, but I don't want to scare you away, right? We're going to go to scale to fit artboard, just like last time. Enter. And it should be more or less on a page, right? Regardless of whatever paper size that you had last time, it usually goes back to by default. So right now, I think I have like a 36 by something, right, for another class that I was doing. So let's go to document setup first, edit artboards. We'll click on that artboard, and as long as you're in Essentials, you'll see this up here. Yep. Oh man, I was so close. So we'll go to 17 inches and by 11, right? And obviously that bounding box that we had originally, in our case, almost there, almost got it. Looks like it needs to be, oh, maybe it looks like I didn't get my ratio correct. I might want to double check that in Rhino. I think I did kind of just draw it, but not the end of the world. It will be the end of the world if we need to make that to scale, though. We need that bounding box to be the correct ratio. Don't worry, I'll remind us later. But let's get that image lined up with this guy. I would say first things first, change the line weight, get it dialed in, get the lines first, right? And if you're like Bernardo last time and I saw you clicking on every single line, again, the magic is in the layers, guys. Setting yourself up for success is half the battle when it comes to digital technologies. And to be fair, nobody wants to kind of like, oh man, I missed a line, go back to Rhino, do it again. Oh man, I missed another line, go back to Rhino, do it again. Nobody wants to do that, right? So kind of get everything in there first and get used to trying to spend the least time in Illustrator, right? So in our case, let's go to layers, which is not here. If you don't have layers, that's okay. Go to window, go down to layers. Sweet. Looks like mine just kind of popped out for a second. Nice. But we got our layers. I like to turn them all off first and just leave one at a time. See what's what, if you will. Let's make that a little bit bigger for the recording and a little smaller for that. There we go. It doesn't look like I have any default lines, so that's okay. I could probably delete that. Oh, there's some hidden lines. What do we know about hidden lines, guys? Are they solid or dashed? Dashed, definitely. So let's go ahead and take all those lines. Simple. I'm going to go to stroke, not having a stroke, but stroke. And you'll notice there's actually a couple of advanced options. If you don't see this at first, you'll notice you have hide options and show options. Go ahead and click show options. That way you can get some more out of that. I'm going to hit dash line. I'm going to zoom in and see what that did. Right? Oh, dang, that's the biggest dash line I've ever seen. Let's go ahead and do something a little bit smaller. Let's say, I don't know, let's try 4 with a gap of 4 and another dash of 4, right? Not bad. Yeah, getting better. The line weight's super thick, so usually I like to make them more like construction lines, so like 0.2, I don't know, 8. And eventually, to be fair, you kind of get used to these numberings. Everybody kind of finds their own, and to be fair, it depends on the drawing, right? If it's a really big drawing, you're gonna have bigger lines. If it's a really small drawing, a very small diagram, it's gonna have smaller lines. The same thing could be said if you were drafting analog. However, it's 11 by 17, so usually I pick something between, maybe I didn't tell you. Do you guys know the smallest line print that a printer can print? Maybe I didn't tell you. 0.125. That would definitely be something to write down. Because if you do anything smaller than that, guess what? Won't print. Right? So be careful. Obviously, there are limitations. And to be fair, that's with our printers. There are better printers out there, some that print at 2,400 DPI, and they probably can get some smaller lines. Let's be fair, right? But at least at our printers, don't get me wrong, we have some pretty good ones. Their max is about 1,200 DPI. Now again, this is not to like make your file like super big, but keep in mind it's solving those resolutions, right? Especially in a vector program like this. But that being the case, that's still looking kind of thick to me. I kind of want to go even smaller. 2, and 2. Oh, not 42. 2. And that's a little nicer to me. I may have to click my layer again if I accidentally click out. Not a big deal. So I'm going to take that 0.28, and I'm even going to change a little darker, right? I mean, what's really nice is Illustrator gives you a preview now. That was not the case. You had to sit there and go back and go back. You're like, oh, I like that, I guess. Right? But what's really nice is you can really dial it in now. It's pretty live time. So that's looking pretty good. I did want to go a little darker because I know there's going to be a lot of stuff in there. So I want them to stand out, right? However, you'll notice stuff like this, right? Doesn't quite look like a line even. And you may realize that I may have to delete some things or realize that I have a bunch of tiny lines. So don't get me wrong, there's not an easy way to solve that, I'm not gonna lie to you. I might, if it was a final drawing for my portfolio, I might actually spend the time and go in there and delete each one. For the sake of an exercise, no, right? Let's just, again, the technical skills is what we're after. We want to prove that we know this program to another individual. And, you know, if we can communicate a diagram like a bowl of cereal, then better. Even better to practice with. But that's looking good. Let's choose our next layer, and I can even lock this one. That way I don't accidentally select any and make those changes. It's only going to select that green layer. So in my case, let's select all of it. It looks like it's also a hidden layer. I can take my eyedropper tool. If I didn't want to do all that or memorize all those settings, I can do the eyedropper tool and I can click on that previous setting. And it's going to match it, hopefully. See if it did. It did, but again, we have some of that same similar situation with the graphic line. I'm going to go ahead and fake it till I make it and just make it a little bit less noticeable. So I'm going to make it a little grayer and maybe even a little smaller. Maybe I'm going to go with the smallest line type I can go with. 0.125. To be fair, it's super light. I mean, to be absolutely honest, sometimes you really have to move the paper, you know what I mean? And then you kind of see it, right? It's perfect for construction lines. Think about it. In Graphics 1 and Graphics 2, what are you told about construction lines? That they're the lightest element, right? You want them to be seen, but only about 5 inches away. You don't really want them to be seen 10 feet away, right? You're like, whoa, bro, I can't hear your object. It's too loud with hidden lines, right? So, again, we have a lot of control in this program, but let's keep going. Let's get our layers first. Obviously, we don't want orange today, but it is looking nice in thickness, I will say. So let's maybe go with something a little bit more grayscale. That's looking nice. And I don't know, maybe about a 0.65. Not too thick, not too small. Go ahead and lock that again. And my last layer, that surface. Maybe I go with the accent color. I mean, why not? Let's go with the purple accent color today. It's looking pretty sweet. And it stands out pretty well. It definitely gets the point across that, oh, I think something's important about this layer, and it has something to do with, obviously, a huge split between these elements. I could even maybe take it a step further and go, well, I kind of want you to realize what is being cut, so maybe I even want to turn that purple. So for instance, I may need to unlock it. And I could still directly change the lines, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, you can select. However, selecting in Illustrator is like pulling teeth. You have no idea what you actually selected, right? It just kind of bound box everything for you. So again, I didn't get those lines. And again, selecting something in Illustrator can be painful. But that being said, I could also draw another line after Make 2D too, and make a outline layer. Done. I know I can just cover that line, if you will. Very similar to if it was analog, I can take a pen and go over my analog graphite line. Nobody has to know, right? But let's finish that up. That's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and lastly get our image in there and call it a day for this tutorial. So we'll place it, file, place that image that we either rendered or screenshotted. So in my case, place. Where'd it go? Dang it. Am I missing it? It's gone. Why? Oh, because I didn't pick a layer. There we go. It's still not enacted. What's going on here? Usually you can place anything at any given time. I've never seen it grayed out like that. However, let's defeat the system and just drag it in. There you have it. So it looks like it opened it up as a separate PNG file and clearly doesn't want me to put this in as another layer. I'm going to go ahead and make a layer. We'll call it photo. See what's going on here. Maybe lock everything else. Double click. Make sure there's nothing locking it. Because you can't really place anything on a locked layer. It's just going to be like, nah, you can't do it, man. And there, now we have place. So clearly you can't. I was maybe still stuck on a locked layer. All good. You might run into that same problem, so glad we could solve it together. Test render, and let's go ahead and place it. As you can see, it's pretty big, and we need to line that up, right? However, it doesn't seem to have the shade and shadow elements that I really wanted. That's okay. Not a big deal. I may need to Photoshop it and go, oh man, I kind of messed up, or take a new screenshot. So maybe let's delete that one and go with my screenshot instead. So again, mine normally it defaults as at the desktop. In my case, I put in a special spot, screenshots and recordings, and that should be good. There we go. Sweet. So that's looking pretty good. However, the background's still not like white. If you did want to change that, we could go to Photoshop. Maybe a small review for some of us. And what's kind of nice is this image, as long as I change it and save it back to the same file type, it'll actually update this one as well. However, good thing we put it in our own layer because, well, now we can move that layer all the way to the bottom. Obviously, we want those lines to be on top of the image. And here's where the fun part comes in, right? Trying to get it just right. Holy crap, did I almost get it? Ah, man, so close. You'd be surprised, you start to get really good at these things. But honestly, my tip and trick is to line up one moment first. So for instance, obviously right here, and you can see I'm lining it up to this spot. And we still have, it needs to get bigger, right? In really all directions. So let's make it a little bit bigger. And eventually you can do this all without talking like I am, right? And it goes much faster, by the way. But, little changes. Again, holding shift. If I accidentally don't hold shift, you might as well just replace it, because getting back to the original ratio of the image, again, nearly impossible. So if you accidentally mess it up, no big deal. Edit, undo. If you don't know where you messed up and it's just not working for you, try and place it again, right? Especially after 10 minutes of fooling around with it and getting frustrated. So nobody needs to spend 6 hours being frustrated. But we're getting close. Oh, a little too big. Yep, a little too big. So as you can see, the smaller the change, usually the better. And dial it in just right. I can also use my arrow keys to dial that in. It still looks a little too big. But see if you can get it as close as possible. A little bit bigger. See, I'm just going back and forth, back and forth. You can hold shift and arrow keys and it'll make a bigger change for you. Man, I really went way too big. There we go. Dial it in. But yeah, usually if you can get one spot, you can kind of just control one area at a time. As you see, I forgot to hold shift. And as you can see, I'm struggling, so I'm just going to try again. Kind of did that one on purpose, but again, we'll place. Try again. No big deal. Right? Work smarter, not harder, right? But again, make sure you hold shift and dial that in just right. In my case, it looks like it may have gotten 2 different views. It's lining up in one spot, but not the other. I was pretty sure I double checked, but not the end of the world. I can always take another screenshot. But as you can see, it can be a struggle. I can fake it till I make it though. Sort of squish it. To be fair, you could try, but especially if it's just way too off, it's never gonna work. But clearly mine is off a little bit. So even right now, I'm already kind of noticing just how off it is. Like some parts are getting there, some parts are not. What do we do if that happens to us, right? Again, I'd want to double check those things. Now, I'm pretty sure that I did get the right render, but maybe not, right? So I would want to maybe double check those things. But again, I'd rather spend 30 minutes double checking than 30 minutes being frustrated, right, to say the least. So let's double check that view. So go back to perspective and we'll go to my camera, double click. I'm gonna make 2D one more time, double check, enter, hidden lines. Especially once you start getting really good at this, right? I mean, it's no time at all, right? I mean, I accidentally stretched my lines. See, be careful with Gumball, right? You accidentally click one thing and suddenly your computer's like frozen for a second. And I can't even edit undo it? What? Now that's wild. that could be because of the screen recording. Well, I'm gonna delete you. Get out of here. And let's get this one actually out of the way so I don't accidentally think that I accidentally grabbed the wrong one, right? And I'll keep that for size reference, but let's try again. Not a big deal. Sometimes you gotta try again. Again, double click, just in case. Make 2D, enter. Maintain layers, hidden lines, awesome. Voila. Ah, dang it, I did it, almost did it again. You can also type in move to avoid something like that by accident. That's looking pretty good. Again, gotta hold shift here. That may have been the issue, and as you can see, do you guys see it? I accidentally messed up my make 2D lines. It's a little wider. So it's a good thing I didn't spend 3 hours, you know, getting frustrated. I make mistakes too, I'm human, right? But much better. And already saved us so much time. Let's try again. File, export selected. I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of go over the one I already had. It might tell me no, but that's okay. Exercise 2, part 2, DWG, awesome. Export, are you sure? Hell yeah. Export, and minimize. So, you'll notice I didn't remake an image, because, well, I'm assuming one of those is correct. I mean, why do more work if I don't have to? And let's go ahead and try again. So, I'm just gonna close this one. I could just match the layers too, by the way. I mean, I have the opportunity to show you some more tricks, so let's do that. Let's go ahead and open it again. Because it does save it as like a new file. So if I do that one, yes, it's still gonna save the previous one, which is pretty nice, right? It didn't, again, always used to do that. But what's kind of nice about that, guys, do you notice what it did? It did all my line layers for me. Because it's the exact same file name, right? That's what that little question at the front was. It was like, do you want to maintain the layers that you just did? Yeah. Why would I want to do all that line work again, right? So even if I do make a mistake, even if I do have to go back to Rhino, it's not the end of the world. Illustrator's trying to help us out in that regard. But again, what's nice is, you know, now we have the correct lines, right? So now I can delete this one and try again, right? Oh, dang, we're already hitting 10:15. I didn't want to make this recording too long, but let's go ahead and get that image in there. So place. Exercise 2, sorry, mine's in a different spot. Sweet. And then that's looking a little bit better. Hold shift. I don't know, maybe it's actually the rendering that was off. Well, let's double check. We know we got the lines now. The render's pretty simple. To be fair, you can actually double click in any view, but you can suddenly change all your views. So I prefer to do it in the perspective view. Again, double click. We'll go to a rendered mode. And we'll just take a screenshot. Pretty good. In fact, in my case, on a Mac, you can usually just drag it right in. Ah, much better. And we could dial it in a little bit better. But of course, do your best to align that just right. And I'm just gonna fake it till I make it for the sake of tutorial. Because I'm not gonna lie, this process can take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, right? Trying to get it just right. More or less, it should make kind of a hybrid drawing, right? If we just take a look at this one real quick. Because, you know, I don't want to make this a really long. Obviously, if you're watching this part, you can totally skip it to the informational parts. I always feel bad when I'm kind of just sitting here, like, making things work. But yeah, let's just take a look at, you know, maybe even that surface. As you can see, still kind of a pixelated image, right? That's because of that screenshot effect. To be fair, we're really close to the drawing too. More or less, this is about the actual size that it would be. So, again, kind of nice to, again, see this kind of hybridization of both line. I can completely control the line weight And we can still get some shade and shadow effect without necessarily having to calculate it all like we would normally in graphics too. But mess around with it, right? You're gonna run into kind of these same issues, and that's kind of the best part. That's the best way we learn, is running into issues and solving them, right? To say the least. Now I know this part is a little bit more advanced and obviously could be applied to exercise 1 and clearly exercise 2. However, not every single step has to be suddenly rendered, right? It's totally fine if just the final is rendered with some shade and shadow. That's a bonus, right? Or if you just want to do the initial step as a shade and shadow element, that's fine too. But I would encourage you to at least try and get one step, or just maybe the final shot, lined up this way. It will be required in exercise 3, so a good idea to practice. It's not actually mandatory for exercise 2, but if you're already, gotten to a point where you're getting a little bored, like, yeah, I got the line weight thing down, what else is there? Well, let's get some shade and shadow to it, things like that. And there's obviously even more ways I could go about doing some shade and shadow. But regardless, I'll end it here for today because it's already pretty long. But are there any Illustrator questions that maybe popped up? Nicole had a great question about the sun. Any others that popped up during?
Yeah, what was that thing where it said maintain, like whenever you replace that file?
Absolutely. So you're talking about the Make 2D portion?
Yeah, where it maintained the line weights.
Correct. So if I take that, are you talking about Rhino or in Illustrator?
Illustrator.
Okay. Yeah. Basically what I did is when I re-exported my Rhino file, I made sure to save it on top of the previous one I just did.
Okay.
Right? And if I leave it open in Illustrator, when I open it up again, it'll maintain some of those changes, or the layer changes.
Okay.
Right?
Is there an option you have to click whenever?
You'll see it pop up a little thing. It'll either say cancel or OK. Press
Okay.
OK, and it'll
Press OK.
go ahead and do that. Great question. Sorry, this is a cemetery. It's very very sad. I guess we all got to go one day. So you do have to ask yourself, what do you really want to get done while you're here, right? I know most of us probably in our 20s don't really ask that question, but I will say this is probably the best part about being the age that you are right now, right? Is being able to learn new things and see how they can be applied to change the world. Because I will say, these skills are needed so heavily, guys. And they pay really good money to do so, right? To build worlds that don't exist yet. And people pay high dollar to play video games inside of them, right? You'd be surprised how many architects are involved in video games. But anyway, any other questions? Those were great ones, by the way. Nobody? We'll end it for today. Otherwise, I would say, let's